On Earth, in cities and villages, people gathered outside, watching the flashes above the sky. They had seen death. They had felt terror. But now they felt something stronger, hope. Back in orbit, the battle raged on. Human ships fought like cornered wolves, striking with fury at every chance. Alien cruisers fell one by one, torn apart by desperate attacks. Admiral Hayes's voice carried across the comms, steady and strong. This is humanity's turning point. Hold the line. Fight with everything you have. The galaxy is watching us now. His words lit fire in weary hearts. Soldiers screamed with renewed strength. Pilots gripped their controls tighter. Engineers worked faster despite their burns and blood. The galaxy had seen the railgun's shot, but now it was seeing something greater. It was seeing the human spirit. As the battle reached its peak, the alien fleet began to falter. Their formation broke. Ships hesitated. For the first time, they looked like the hunted instead of the hunters. Admiral Hayes leaned forward, eyes burning. They're breaking. They know fear. The railgun platform, half ruined and sparking, still loomed in the darkness like a silent warning. The aliens had seen what humanity could do with just one weapon, one chance, and they were not ready to face another. One by one, the alien ships began to retreat. Engines flared, weapons dimmed, and the once invincible fleet turned away from Earth. The turning point had come. Humanity had not only survived, they had made the galaxy's strongest empire retreat. But Admiral Hayes did not celebrate. His eyes lingered on the wreckage, the drifting bodies, the silent ships that would never return. His voice, heavy with grief and pride, echoed in the command deck. This is not the end of the war, but it is the beginning of our story. The crew bowed their heads. They all knew the truth. Humanity's first real victory had come with blood and sacrifice, and the galaxy would never forget it. The battlefield slowly grew quiet. Where once the stars burned with fire, now only drifting wreckage remained. Human ships, scarred and broken, floated among the ruins. Alien warships, once invincible, were retreating into the dark, their engines glowing as they fled back into deep space. The war was not over, but the impossible had happened. Humanity had won its first true victory. On Earth, the people looked up at the sky with wide eyes. The flashes of battle were fading, and the silence of night returned. For hours, they had lived with terror, believing their home would be destroyed. Now, instead of death, they felt something new, hope. Crowds cheered in the streets. Families cried and hugged. Strangers embraced as if they were brothers. Across the world, voices rose in unison. We survived. We fought back. In the command deck of the human flagship, Admiral Hayes stood tall. His uniform was torn, his face covered in smoke, but his eyes shone with pride. Around him, officers and soldiers clapped, cried, and hugged each other, but Hayes did not smile. He looked out at the stars, at the countless wrecks of human ships, and thought of the lives lost. This is our victory, he said softly, but it was paid with blood. Never forget them. His voice carried across the fleet, through the comms, to every surviving ship. And for a moment, silence returned. Silence filled with respect for the fallen. The orbital railgun platform was half destroyed. Its coils smoked, its barrel cracked, its decks full of wounded engineers. Yet it stood. It had fired twice, and with those 2 shots, history had changed. The surviving crew gathered around the weapon, touching the burned metal with reverence. Some whispered prayers. Others simply sat in silence, knowing they had been part of something greater than themselves. In the alien fleet, retreat turned to silence. The commanders were humiliated. Never in their history had such a primitive race stood against them, much less destroyed their flagship. They did not retreat out of mercy, but out of fear of another impossible shot. And deep within their councils, a single truth spread like wildfire. Humanity was dangerous. Humanity was no longer prey. On Earth, messages spread across the globe. Every screen, every radio, every channel carried the same words. Humanity has won. The invaders are retreating. In small villages and massive cities alike, people cried with relief. Bells rang. Fireworks were lit. It was not just a military victory, it was a spiritual one. A message to every man, woman, and child: we are not weak. We will not bow. Admiral Hayes finally allowed himself a small smile. He turned to his crew. This was only the first battle. They will come again, stronger, angrier. But from this day forward, the galaxy will know humanity fights back. His officers saluted, their eyes burning with determination. At dawn, the sun rose over Earth. Its light broke through the smoke of the battle, casting gold and red across the sky. The oceans glittered. The mountains shone. Humanity's home, fragile and beautiful, was still alive. Children pointed at the sky, where the broken shapes of alien wrecks burned as they fell through the atmosphere like meteors. They laughed and shouted, not in fear, but in triumph. The people of Earth would tell their children and their children's children about this night, the night when the weak became strong, the night when humanity wrote its first chapter among the stars. The galaxy had watched. Other civilizations, hidden in shadows, waiting in silence, had seen the battle, and whispers began to spread. The humans have power. The humans will fight. The humans are dangerous. And so, a legend was born. For humanity, it was not the end. It was the beginning, the first victory, the first stand, the moment the galaxy would remember forever. Admiral Hayes gave his final order of the battle. His voice echoed across the fleet, steady and strong. Recover the wounded, honor the dead, and remember this day, for today, humanity has earned its place among the stars. The fleet moved slowly, battered but unbroken, carrying home the survivors, and Earth, once a silent planet on the edge of the galaxy, now carried a name that would never be forgotten. Humanity's first victory had changed the galaxy forever. It started on a night I'll never forget, the kind of night when the world feels too quiet, like it's holding its breath. Rain tapped against my window, steady and cold, while thunder rolled in the distance. The only light in my room came from the faint glow of my old radio, the dial still glowing even though I hadn't touched it in years. I should have been asleep, but something in the air kept me awake, something I couldn't explain. Restless, I turned the dial, letting the static fill the silence. I thought maybe some late-night station would distract me, but instead, I heard it, a whisper. So faint, I thought I imagined it. I leaned closer, pressing my ear almost against the speaker. And then it came again, low, metallic, layered with static, but unmistakably a voice. The Senate must never be revealed. My blood ran cold. I froze, staring at the dial as if it could explain what I had just heard. I still remember that night. The way the shadows in my room seemed to grow darker. The way the rain sounded sharper, like needles on the glass. I wanted to turn the radio off, but I couldn't. Something inside me knew I had stumbled onto a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. I turned the knob slowly, carefully, and the voice grew clearer. It spoke of a Senate, a council beyond the stars, hiding something from humanity. My heart pounded as the whisper broke apart in the static, words bleeding in and out. They must forget. Humanity must never know. The truth buried. I pulled back, shaking my head. No, this couldn't be real. It had to be some broadcast, some trick. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This wasn't a signal meant for me. It wasn't meant for any of us. The storm outside cracked with thunder, shaking the walls, and in that split second, I thought I saw a figure reflected in the dark glass of my window, a shape standing behind me. But when I spun around, nothing. Just the empty room, just shadows. And yet the voice still whispered through the static, as if it knew I was listening, as if it had been waiting for me. I didn't sleep that night. After hearing that strange whisper on the frequency, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was trying to tell me a secret. The storm had passed, but the silence in my room was heavier than thunder. Every shadow seemed alive. Every creak in the walls felt like a warning. I opened my laptop and began searching. Not on regular websites. No, those would never show the truth. I went deeper, into old archives, forgotten forums, digital corners of the internet that most people would never dare enter. And that's when I first came across the words, the Galactic Senate. At first, it sounded absurd, like something out of a science fiction movie. But the more I dug, the more I realized it wasn't fiction at all. There were fragments of stories, scattered whispers across old databases, and even some redacted government files. I still remember the chill I felt when I clicked one of those files, and the screen went black before reopening to a single line of text. Humanity was never supposed to know. I froze. The words felt like ice in my veins. Who was hiding this, and why? For hours, I sat in that dim light, scrolling through corrupted images, half-erased texts, and desperate warnings from people who claimed they had seen too much. Some spoke of a Senate beyond the stars, one that ruled over countless worlds. But Earth's name was always missing, always erased. I leaned closer to the screen, the faint glow lighting my face. My heart raced as I pieced together the scraps of information. Could it be true? Had humanity been part of something far greater, only to be cut out, silenced, and forgotten? And then, I heard it, a sound that didn't belong in my quiet room. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, against my front door. I froze in my chair. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, and I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I turned my head toward the sound. My door was locked. I knew it was locked. Still, I stood up, every step heavy, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I finally opened the door, the night air rushed in. But no one was there. No footsteps. No shadows. Just silence. I was about to close the door when I saw it. Etched into the wood, faint but unmistakable, was a strange insignia. 3 interlocking circles, glowing faintly as if burned into the surface. I touched it with trembling fingers, and the wood was still warm. That's when I knew. Someone had been here. Someone who knew what I had discovered, and I wasn't alone anymore. I couldn't stop staring at that symbol carved into my door. 3 interlocking circles glowing faintly in the dark. It wasn't random. It was a message. A warning. Maybe even a challenge. For the next few nights, I barely slept. I kept seeing that shape in my mind, turning, shifting, as if it wanted me to understand something. And then, it clicked. It wasn't just a design. It was coordinates. My chest tightened as I mapped them out, and the location appeared on the screen, an abandoned observatory, miles outside the city. A place no one visited anymore. Broken, forgotten, left to rot. I don't know what pulled me there. Curiosity, fear, or maybe the whisper I had heard on the radio that night. But I had to go. When I arrived, the air was colder than it should have been. The building stood tall and silent. Its dome cracked. Glass shattered across the ground like frozen tears. The moonlight flickered through the broken windows, painting jagged patterns across the dusty floor. Each step I took echoed too loudly, as if the building itself was listening. And then, I noticed something I couldn't explain. The old radio equipment, the kind that should have been long dead, was still humming. A faint static filled the room, low and unsettling like a whisper just out of reach. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer, brushing dust off the dials. The static grew louder, and then it spoke. Not in words at first, but in fragments. Metallic tones, sharp edges of a voice fighting through the noise. I leaned closer, my hand trembling as I adjusted the frequency. Finally, the words broke through. The Senate has betrayed you. Humanity must never remember. My heart pounded in my chest. The voice was not human. It was layered, mechanical, yet strangely mournful. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Who are you? I whispered, my own voice shaking. The radio crackled violently, and then the voice came again, clearer this time. They are watching you now. And then, silence. The entire observatory went dark. The faint red lights on the equipment blinked out. The humming stopped, but the silence was worse than the noise, because in that silence, I heard something else, footsteps, not outside, not in the distance, inside the observatory, and they were getting closer. The footsteps echoed through the broken dome, steady and deliberate. My breath caught, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wanted to call out, to ask who was there, but my voice refused to come. I was frozen, trapped between fight and flight. Then, nothing. The sound stopped as suddenly as it began. The silence pressed against me, heavy and suffocating. I forced myself to turn, to scan the dark corners of the observatory. but there was no one. Just shadows and the faint glow of moonlight on the cracked floor. I should have left. Any sane person would have walked away, but instead I searched. Behind one of the collapsed shelves, I found a rusted door, half hidden under debris. My hands shook as I pulled at the metal, forcing it open. A stairway spiraled down into blackness, and the air that rushed out was thick, stale, and cold. With only the dim light of my phone, I descended. Each step creaked beneath my weight, and the sound of dripping water echoed in the distance. The deeper I went, the colder it became, until I reached a chamber carved deep beneath the observatory, and that's where I found them. Stacks of old boxes, sealed containers, files covered in dust. I tore one open and my blood ran cold. Inside were documents, fragments of murals, broken devices that didn't look human, symbols etched in languages I couldn't understand. And yet, I recognized some of the names. They were names of nations, of leaders, of wars I had learned about in history books, except here the details were different. Here those wars weren't just fought between humans. They were fought with others, beings from beyond Earth. I ran my fingers across one mural, faded but still haunting. It showed humans standing alongside towering figures with luminous eyes, holding strange banners. And above them, a council chamber with a crescent-shaped table, the Galactic Senate. It wasn't a myth. It wasn't a story. It was history. Our history. And yet every record, every trace had been buried, erased, rewritten so that we would never remember. I staggered back, the weight of betrayal crushing me. Everything I had ever learned about humanity, our wars, our progress, our unity, had been carefully rewritten to hide the truth. We were once part of something greater. But the question burned inside me. Why had they cut us off? Why had they erased us? Before I could think further, the lights of my phone flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the chamber, and in that absolute silence I heard something move behind me. A low, slow breath. I wasn't alone down there. I ran from that underground chamber like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. I drove through the night, every shadow on the roadside feeling alive, every headlight behind me too close, too deliberate. When I finally reached home, the air felt wrong, too still, too quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I felt it everywhere. Walking down the street, I would sense eyes on me. At night, the streetlights outside my window flickered as if signaling some silent message. And when I turned off the lights to sleep, I could swear I heard footsteps pacing outside my door. I kept telling myself it was paranoia, just my mind cracking under the weight of what I had discovered. But then something happened that tore away every doubt. One evening when I came home, I found a note slipped under my door. No envelope. No handwriting I recognized. Just 5 words written in uneven, urgent strokes. They erased millions before. Stop! I read it over and over, my stomach twisting tighter each time. What did it mean? Millions erased? Was that even possible? I wanted to throw the note away, but my hands wouldn't let go of it. Instead, I folded it and shoved it into my pocket. That's when I heard it. From inside my own house. A floorboard creaked. My chest froze. I had been gone all day. No one should have been inside. Slowly, carefully, I stepped into the dark hallway. The air was thick, heavy, almost humming with quiet tension. "Hello?" I whispered, though I already knew no one would answer. And then I saw it, a shadow, long, distorted, stretching across my living room wall. But I was alone, or at least, I thought I was. That shadow never left my mind. For nights I barely slept, lying awake, waiting to hear footsteps, waiting for another note to appear. But nothing came, until the message on my phone. It wasn't from any contact I knew. No number, no name. Just a string of coordinates and a single word beneath them, proof. My first instinct was to delete it, to pretend I never saw it. But I couldn't. My curiosity had already dug me too deep. I had to know. The coordinates led me far beyond the city, into the wilderness where an old government facility lay hidden, swallowed by vines and time. The fence was rusted, the gates chained shut, but I knew I wasn't the first to slip inside. Someone had been here before me. The air inside was heavy with dust. My footsteps echoed against cold metallic corridors. Red emergency lights flickered on the walls, weak but still alive, as if the place itself was breathing in its sleep. Deeper and deeper I went, until I found a sealed chamber. The lock was broken. Whoever sent that message wanted me to see what was inside. When I pushed the door open, the room lit up with a soft, unnatural glow. And then I saw them files, hundreds of them, records stacked on shelves, each one stamped with a crest I recognized, the same 3 interlocking circles carved into my door. My hands trembled as I pulled the nearest folder open. What I read inside made my chest tighten. Humanity's history, but not the history we were taught. Wars I thought were fought between nations had names of other species written in the margins. There were treaties, agreements signed not by countries but by planets. And over again, one word appeared in every document. Federation. We had been part of it. Humanity had once stood as equals among other civilizations. But then something happened, something the Senate didn't want us to remember. My throat went dry as I opened another file. Inside was a transcript, words burned into my memory even now. The humans must be cut off. The truth must never reach them. If they remember, Earth will burn, I stumbled back, my heart racing, the paper crumpling in my hands. Why? Why had they erased us? Why had they buried our past? And then, a soft click echoed behind me, the sound of a door closing. I froze. I wasn't alone in that chamber. That click behind me froze every muscle in my body. My pulse thundered in my ears as I turned, expecting to see someone standing there in the dim red light. But the doorway was empty. Empty, yet I could feel it. A presence. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if something unseen was sharing the room with me. I forced myself back to the files, flipping through them with trembling hands, desperate for answers. And that's when I found it, the final piece. A sealed folder marked with one word in bold black letters, exile. Inside were transcripts, grainy images, and one horrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just been forgotten by the Galactic Senate. We had been banished. The documents told a story of rebellion, a time when humans refused to bow to the Senate's authority, when our ancestors dared to challenge their control. We weren't erased because we were weak. We were erased because we were dangerous. The Senate feared us. We had turned against them. And for that, they cut us off, wiped our memories, buried our history, and left us trapped on a single planet, never knowing what we had once been. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the papers. My chest burned with a storm of emotions, anger, grief, betrayal. Everything we thought we knew about ourselves was a lie. And then the recording started. The old speakers in the chamber crackled to life, and a voice filled the room. Cold, stern, inhuman. The truth must never reach them. If humanity remembers its power, it will rise again. And if it rises, it will burn the stars. I stumbled back, the words searing into me. That was the truth. The real reason. We weren't erased for protection. We weren't silenced for peace. We were silenced because the Senate believed humanity was destined to destroy everything. I don't know how long I stood there in the dark, clutching those papers, my mind spiraling. All I know is that when I finally looked up, the red light above the door had turned green. Someone or something had unlocked the way out. Maybe it was a warning, maybe an invitation, or maybe a trap. I don't know if I'll make it back here again. I don't know if I'll even be able to tell you more. But if you're hearing this now, remember my words. Humanity was never small, never alone. We were powerful enough to frighten the stars, and that is the dark truth the Senate tried to bury. Audience. Message: if this ending shook you as much as it shook me, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps me keep uncovering the truths they want us to forget. I didn't sleep after what I found in that chamber. The word exile burned in my mind like fire. I carried the files with me. Proof that humanity's history had been stolen. Proof that we weren't small, weak creatures, but something far greater. Something the Senate feared. But fear has a way of twisting the air around you. The more I carried that truth, the more I felt them watching me. At first, it was subtle. The same car parked outside my apartment, engine cold, driver never leaving. People on the street who walked just a little too slowly behind me, only to disappear when I turned to confront them. And then it got worse. Late one night, I woke to find my bedroom door ajar, though I knew I had locked it. The faint glow of the streetlight spilled across the floor, and in that pale light, I saw footprints, muddy, leading right up to the side of my bed, but no one was there. That was when I realized the Senate's watchers weren't just stories. They were real, and they knew I had uncovered the truth. I couldn't stay in the city anymore. Every wall had ears, every window had eyes. So I left, drove for hours through the dark countryside, the weight of those files heavy in the passenger seat. My only destination was the coordinates scribbled on the last page of the exile folder. No explanation, just a set of numbers burned into the paper. The road ended in a forgotten valley, surrounded by jagged cliffs. The air there felt wrong, too quiet. No wind, no birds, no signs of life. My headlights cut through the dark, and then I saw it. An entrance. A black opening carved into the rock face. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But I didn't. Something pulled me forward. Maybe curiosity, maybe desperation. Maybe something deeper inside me that had always known I wasn't meant to live in ignorance. Inside, the tunnel stretched on forever, walls damp and metallic, as if this place wasn't carved by human hands. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, as though something else was walking in time with me, just out of sight. At last, I reached a chamber. It was vast, larger than any underground structure I had ever seen. Towering columns lined the walls, humming faintly with blue light. And in the center, a sphere, metallic, pulsing, suspended in the air like it was alive. I approached slowly, the files clutched to my chest, and as I did, the sphere awakened. A voice filled the chamber, not from speakers, not from any device I could see, but from everywhere. Deep, layered, ancient. Humanity returns to the archive. My knees nearly buckled. My mouth went dry. "What are you?" I whispered. The light inside the sphere flared, and suddenly my mind wasn't my own. Images flooded me. Humans standing beside alien beings, councils of light, cities that stretched across the stars. And then, fire, rebellion, the Senate's chambers collapsing in flames. Our ancestors rising in fury against their control, and then darkness, silence. "You were exiled," the voice said. "But your blood remembers. It always remembers." I staggered back, clutching my head. "Why show me this? Why me?" The chamber pulsed with light, and I felt the presence inside me, ancient and heavy, because the Senate fears you, because the Watchers have failed, and because you are awakening. The files slipped from my hands, scattering across the floor. My heart raced as the truth sank in. This wasn't just about uncovering history. This wasn't just about knowing the truth. Something inside me had been triggered, a memory buried not in books, not in archives, but in my very blood, and the Senate knew it. I backed away, my chest burning, lungs fighting for air. "If this is true," I whispered, "if humanity is so dangerous, then why bring me here? Why not keep me ignorant?" The sphere dimmed for a moment, almost like it was considering my question. And then the answer came, so cold it froze my veins. "Because ignorance will not protect you. The Senate has already chosen. Earth's time of silence is ending." "They are coming!" I stumbled toward the tunnel, panic clawing at me. My footsteps echoed too loudly, too desperately, but I couldn't stop. I had to get out. I had to escape. When I reached the valley, the night sky was clearer than I had ever seen it. Stars blazed overhead, brilliant and sharp. But then, one of those stars moved. No, not one. Several. Points of light shifting against the heavens. Drawing closer, in perfect formation. Ships. They weren't human. My breath caught, my entire body trembling as I realized the truth. The Senate hadn't just been watching. They were here. The files, the whispers, the warnings. It all led to this moment. Humanity's exile was over, and whatever came next, it wasn't going to be peaceful. I looked back at the cliffs, at the tunnel that now seemed like the mouth of a beast ready to swallow me whole. I looked up at the sky, at the growing shapes of ships descending through the stars, and I understood the final warning in those files. If humanity remembers its power, it will rise again, and if it rises, it will burn the stars. I don't know if I'll live long enough to tell you what happens next. But if you're hearing this, know the truth. The Senate has returned, and we are not prepared. Audience message. If this story sent chills through you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think humanity should rise again, or stay silent? Your voice matters. The night sky was burning with movement. What I had thought were stars slowly shifted, breaking free from the constellations and gliding across the heavens with terrifying precision. They weren't shooting stars. They weren't satellites. They were ships. I stood in that valley, frozen, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My body felt anchored to the earth as the realization sank in. This was no longer whispers in static or shadows in archives. The Senate was here. As the ships descended, their lights swept across the valley like silent searchlights. White beams cut through the darkness, scanning the cliffs, the trees, the ground. I ducked low, pressing my body against the rock wall, praying I wouldn't be seen. The hum of their engines filled the air, a low, resonant vibration that rattled through my chest and made my bones ache. It wasn't just sound. It felt alive, like the very atmosphere was bending around them. One ship hovered above the valley, massive, its underside glowing with strange blue markings that pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat, and then the voice returned, not from the sphere this time, not from any radio, from inside my mind. You carry what must not be carried. The archive has marked you. I clutched my head, dropping to my knees, pain exploding through my skull as the words burned inside me. I tried to push the voice out, but it wasn't just in my mind, it was inside me, rooting itself deeper with every syllable. "No!" I gasped. "Stay out of my head!" The air above shimmered, and in that moment, I saw them. They weren't human. Figures descended from the ship in beams of light, tall, impossibly tall, with elongated forms and faces obscured by luminous masks. Their movements were precise, deliberate, as if every step was calculated. And though they didn't speak, I felt them speaking. Their thoughts pressed against mine, heavy, invasive. Surrender the knowledge. The Senate has decreed. Humanity must remain silent. I stumbled backward, my hand brushing against the files I had stuffed into my jacket. The papers crinkled, and immediately their attention sharpened. Their masked faces turned toward me in unison. They saw me. Panic exploded through me. I ran. The valley floor tore beneath my feet as I sprinted toward the cliffs, every breath a jagged blade in my lungs. Behind me, light flared, and I knew they were pursuing. Shadows of their forms stretched across the ground, impossibly fast, closing in with each heartbeat. A beam of light seared past me, striking the rock and sending shards flying. I fell, my knees scraping raw, but I forced myself back up. I couldn't let them catch me. If they got the files, if they silenced me, the truth would vanish forever. The tunnel, the archive. I had to go back. It was madness, running toward the very place I had fled from, but instinct screamed that it was the only chance. My feet pounded against the stone floor as I hurled myself back into the cave's darkness, the humming of their engines shaking the ground behind me. Inside, the tunnel walls pulsed faintly, reacting to their presence. The air was thick with energy, the kind that made your skin crawl. As I reached the chamber, the sphere still floated, glowing softly as if it had been waiting for me. "Help me!" I shouted, though I wasn't sure if I was speaking to the sphere, to the archive, or to something buried deeper. The sphere flared, blinding white light erupting across the chamber. For a moment, the ships outside hesitated. The figures stopped at the tunnel's edge, as if held back by something unseen, and then the voice returned, not in pain, not in warning this time, but in power. "Awaken!" The word cracked through me like lightning. My vision blurred, my veins burned, and suddenly I wasn't just me anymore. Memories not my own poured into my mind. Humans standing shoulder to shoulder with other species, wielding weapons of light, voices that shook entire worlds. Rebellion, yes, but also unity, strength, defiance. The Senate hadn't erased us because we were weak. They erased us because we had once been unstoppable. And now, I felt a flicker of that power inside me. The figures outside shifted, their thoughts sharp and urgent. Contain him. Terminate if necessary. I staggered, clutching the files, my body trembling under the weight of something I didn't understand. The sphere pulsed again, and a wave of force rippled outward, slamming into the figures at the tunnel entrance. They staggered back, their masks cracking, their forms flickering like broken holograms.